everybody ready? Let's start. Can you please sit down and we can begin the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear friends, I want to welcome you all here to our session on the circular economy on cities. My name is Siiri Mäkelä, and I'm the president of Finnish Agenda 2030 Youth Group. And I'm also a climate activist. And as we just heard, we know that we are now facing a climate crisis. And it is the most important task of our generation to solve that crisis. However, we are not acting accordingly. Because of that, I see it important to remind you that we have about 10 years to have our emissions. It is clear that we need to change the ways we eat, live, travel, produce, and consume. The structures we now think are normal will soon become worthless. We need to take down the basics of our fossil fuel economy. However, this is also a huge opportunity, not only for businesses, but also for us all. It is an opportunity to build a more meaningful life. And the way I see it, especially for the youth, it's not about giving up. It's about finding significance, finding relevance from something more sustainable than overconsumption.
Thank you so much, Siiri, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tiina Kähö, and I'm the Executive Director of Smart and Clean Foundation from here in Helsinki. And I'm really happy to be able to host this session together with Sitra and other partners to talk about cities, because you are here today. As we know, we consume a lot of energy. We have our mobility, transportation systems, our built environment that needs to become fossil-free, and at the same time we can create solutions that are circular in the cities. Here in Helsinki, we are known to be the doers. As a nation, we are also the happiest nation in the world, so welcome to Helsinki, everybody. We have the mayor here soon telling what Helsinki is doing towards circular economy, but as we understand the seriousness of the climate crisis, we have formed this project called Smart and Clean. We started 3 years ago, and we decided we need to work together in a more collaborative, more ecosystem way. We have partners from the city of Helsinki and other neighboring cities. We have great corporations and companies. We have the universities, and we have the Finnish government. With this kind of group, we think we can pull this off. And how we are working is in ecosystems. These ecosystems mean that these wicked problems are so complicated that nobody can do it alone. If we want to transform the transportation system, or if we want to clear the air and have better air quality, we need to pull together all the players together. Currently, we have chosen plastic to be our wicked problem. We all know that plastic is a major environmental problem globally, and maybe here in Helsinki it's not so visible, but we understand that if we are a nation and an area that really can make a closed plastic circle, meaning that all plastic in the area could be recycled, that's a massive task and it's a massive opportunity. We have estimated that today only 6% of all the plastics are being used as material in the Helsinki region. 6%. So we have 94 to go. There are estimations that maybe 67% can be recycled in the system, and that's already a massive task to do that, 60%. But that means that nobody can do this alone. Not a single company, although we have great companies who have the technologies to do the recycling. We have us, fantastic people who love to recycle their packages. We have the waste collection systems that are able to do it, but we need more material, we need more plastic to go into the system. The whole value chain needs to be changed. And this is the challenge we have taken here in Helsinki, that we could actually pull this off, this whole value chain. So if you're interested in more in this effort, please contact me, and I'm really happy to tell more. But these kind of holistic approaches that we like to now do really need leadership. We really need to be proactive to be able to achieve these kind of goals, because they are so difficult. And leadership is the first slot that we are going to discuss today. So let's go to the first session of today. And I would like to introduce our fantastic speakers to the stage. First, I would like to introduce Kirsten Dunlop, the CEO of Climate Kick Europe. Welcome, Kirsten. Some applause. Then we have Esther Agricola from the city of Amsterdam, the director from there. Hello, Esther. Thank you. Then we have Annerika Doma, also from Amsterdam, from Circle Economy. And the last but not the least is the mayor of Helsinki, Jan Vapaavuori. Welcome.
So, thank you so much, Tiina. First, I would like to ask you, Mayor Vapaavuori. Helsinki has set its strategic aim to profile itself as an internationally networked, pioneering local implementer of global responsibilities. What does this mean in terms of circular economy?
That was a tricky one, so let me start by welcoming you to Helsinki, to the capital of the happiest nation in the world. I'm sorry about the little bit chilly weather there outside, but I can promise you that we can compensate that by providing a very long and nice and light evening. So I hope that you are all the way to midnight or something like that. My first point is that most of the globally pressing problems today have an urban context. They have an urban nature. Most of the big problems will either be solved or not in cities. We may use the wording local implementer, and that is true. Of course, we are the local implementers of national policies, but then we are also independent actors. And if you are not able to empower and involve cities in the right way, no nation whatsoever will succeed in this. You need locally working solutions on city level, which are hopefully also scalable. My second point is that you really need a holistic view in order to save the planet, and I think actually that may be the biggest strength of the Finnish society and Helsinki society, that we have a holistic view and a comprehensive approach. Circular economy is certainly a solution, but its footprint is maybe wider than the footprint of many other ones, because it grabs the essential, that we really need a profound change in the way we live our lives. It is a question of recycle, remanufacture, reuse, re. In order to do that, we once again need a really holistic view. And here I see the role of a city and the role of a Helsinki quite big. And I just give you 3 examples. First of all, I think that we need to be a platform for solutions. We see our city mostly as a place and a community, as a platform, as an enabler, instead of being a bureaucracy. I think that the biggest strength, one of the biggest strengths of Helsinki is that we are big enough in order to enable pilots and demonstrations on systemic level, but at the same time we are small enough to make that really happen. We are also a well-educated nation, well-educated city, a city full of early adapters and people who are well-educated, have already the awareness and curiosity and willingness to solve globally pressing problems. Then I see us as an interconnected community for innovators. It's like important to understand that we need everyone on board. And here, once again, is a maybe Nordic or even Dutch, but Northern European strength, that the barriers and thresholds between the public and private sector and the academia is really low, and that we really have quite advanced participatory models in order to take the people on board and empower them. because finally you can't force anyone to change their way of life. You have to get them to will that themselves. And then thirdly, I see the city and my city, and there I think we have most to improve as a good client. We are involved in more or less everything, in energy, in buildings, in mobility, directly or indirectly, water, waste, and so on. If and when cities really understand their role as a client in a right way, I think that we have an extremely strong power in order to make the world a better place.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mayor Vapaavuori. Helsinki is also my favorite city, obviously. And I also know that Helsinki has recently become the second city in the world to commit voluntary local review on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And this session is about Goal 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. And how do you see, how you link city strategies and the SDGs?
Yeah, it's true that the city of New York actually became the very first city to, on a voluntary basis, report directly to the United Nations of their progress in the Sustainable Development Goals. And Helsinki decided to be the second one, and I'm actually going to submit our report to UN in July, I think. Yes, July, this July, so quite soon. I think it may be that the Paris Climate Accord is the best known international agreement, but then on the other hand, I think the Sustainable Development Goals, the Agenda 2030 by United Nations, is the most comprehensive one. I think that in order to make the world a better place, we need to better to understand and know how good we are, and we also need to produce like comparable data between cities. And for us, it was actually a quite easy decision to follow the example of New York, because the Sustainable Development Goals is really and it could be a like universal language for the whole humankind, including the cities, and like mapping our city strategy against the Sustainable Development Goals gives us, first of all, a quite good evidence of where we are good and where we have room for improvement. And on the other hand, it also creates like comparable data where we can compare ourselves, hopefully, in the future with other cities and learn from each other.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Janne. And it was really nice to hear how holistic you also view the circular economy and how it's embedded in the Helsinki strategy. But now we move to Amsterdam. Welcome, ladies, Annerike and Esther. I think I'm not really wrong if I say that we look up Amsterdam as the leading circular city in the world, because we are all in the first steps, but you are going quite fast. But yet you say that only 9% of Amsterdam is circular. Is that right? Or the world is circular, is that correct?
9%
yes.
of the world is
circular? Okay, 9% of the world. But I don't know what the figure is in Amsterdam, but I guess you have now chosen a new approach to your strategy. So can you please elaborate a bit why you have chosen it and what is it going to solve? Please, you can present now. I can give you this.
Yeah, thank you. So before handing to the city itself, I'll introduce a little bit the context of what we're currently, the interesting journey we're currently embarking on. So basically, we have a gap to close of over 90%, which we see as a huge opportunity. And this gap to close, we saw this in the plenary session already, there were lots of facts and figures that were supporting the transition, but basically why we want to close the gap is to meet the needs of all people within the planetary boundaries. And this was actually the starting point, to move away from the linear economy that we just saw, which is a take, make, waste, and most of the waste is being landfilled or is being incinerated or dispersed into the air. So what we need to do is we need to cycle more, we need to optimize, we need to stop extracting, and we need to stop wasting. And that's said very simply, but it needs to be done based on a totally different mindset. And I think that's the critical transition that we need to make. It's really we're speaking about systemic change, and systemic change cannot happen by sole actors. And I'm moving to why we're here today, which is cities leading the change, because cities are not only taking more than 2/3 of the resources currently, but also 2/3 of the energies. So if you speak about leverage points for change, it's a simple question. And all the stakeholders in the cities, which are the citizens themselves, all the businesses involved here. And I'd like to add another SDG, basically, because we speak about sustainable production and consumption, because we consume a lot, way too much. Yes. And basically, why we want to do this is why the circular economy is so interesting. It's not only about the environment, which is currently spoken about a lot, and the planetary boundaries, but it is also really about new business models, but even more important, it's about people. And people, and transition to a circular economy affect their lives greatly, because we speak about new jobs, new skills, what type of education do I need, but we also speak about health issues at the moment, and the transition to healthy, resilient cities with a good life for all. So how to meet the needs for all within the means of the planet on a local level? Because it's always nice to speak conceptually how we should be doing this, but we are actually embarking on this city, or actually on the way on this city already for a few years, together with 15 cities at the moment, but with Amsterdam, we're pioneering continuously and bringing it to other cities after it's been proven. So we were looking at a framework, we researched a framework as a cities team last year to see where we could bring together the societal needs of the society and the planetary boundaries. And we found that framework in the donut. Maybe many of you have heard of donut economics. It's developed by Kate Raworth. And it basically brings together in one framework the ecological ceiling based on 9 categories, the planetary boundaries defined by the Stockholm Resilience Institute, and it brings together the social foundation, which is the inner ring based on 12 categories. And these are the needs of all people, and these are based on all the SDGs, which we want to start measuring at the city level. Currently, we're developing that framework together with Kate Raworth, with a few other cities, C40, but mainly with Amsterdam at the moment, pioneering this. Because we want all citizens of this planet to be part of that safe and just space, that sweet spot in the middle, and not only depriving other people from the basic societal needs. So what I would like to do now is just, before I hand over to Amsterdam, because Kate Raworth can unfortunately not be here, but she'll speak and show in a small video what we've been doing up until so far, since January, because we've been working with all departments of the city of Amsterdam, cross-cutting the silos, which is critical, and I spoke about before, on all the themes of the donut, which is what we do it for. So I hope we can show the video.
Yeah, there it is.
Internationally already want to start using, so we're very, very excited about the energy that's in this room.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I was
no,
just looking
thanks.
at you.
Thanks
Yeah,
a
please,
lot.
Esther, please.
Well, yeah, it's very exciting to bring this theory into practice. And I think what is important to say that Amsterdam is really, but really convinced to bring a fundamental change. Not only the people, not only the city council, but also the mayor in Amsterdam who believes in it. And that's very important. So we believe also in the resolving power of cities, especially growing cities. And to become a real circular, inclusive city, we have to meet the needs of the citizens. And they really care at this very moment. We perceive that every day. They care about their health. They care about healthy city, about employment, about affordability, about inclusiveness. So when we want to take the global ecological ceiling into account, we have to meet the needs of the people, and we have to set a clear goal. And in Amsterdam it means we want to become 100% circular in 2050. It's quite an ambition, but you have to set a goal. And since we know that the donut economy or the circular economy is quite a holistic approach, we did some research because we found out we have to focus, otherwise it will not work. And we set out three sectors, and we focus on these fields. They are building construction, food, and overconsumption. And when you go deeply into these sectors, you really know that we have to change the way we are organized and the way we behave. And I can give you an example, it's, I think the next slide, about the building value chain. And what we did, we developed this so-called circular tendering in the building environment. It's a kind of obligation, and it combines the major themes of the donut economy. So it combines housing, employment, and climate change. And since we want to build almost 8,000 houses a year, we think we can make a difference in building these houses. So we are going through the silos, and we combined opportunities of area development, infrastructure, and public space. So we work on product design and on procurement. It was mentioned before by our minister, and that's really very powerful and important. So we are co-creating this strategy with the strong voice of the people of Amsterdam in a really bottom-up approach. And our mantra is really learning by doing, learning by doing. We set up 116 projects and 17 strategies. And all these projects are evidence-based. We validated them by the private sector. We challenged the private sector and also the citizens, even before we presented these projects to the city council. So the good thing of all the projects is that every time we ask the same question, what do you need to become a circular, thriving neighborhood or a thriving city? And that is very powerful. So to end, we strive to a thriving city, and that means to set a clear goal in the beginning, have a transparent policy, and work together with your citizens. That's the approach.
Great, thank you very much. Maybe some applause now. The time is running, but I would like to ask you, because I think the audience is now quite kind of impressed, and some cities are here who are present who have done a lot, for example, like in Helsinki. But what would be the one single thing for you, from your encouragement? What are the steps that need to be taken to change the mindset and get something done, so you get the feeling that things are progressing?
Well, the best thing you can do is have a quick agreement about the what, and set a clear goal.
Okay.
And accept that you don't know how to do it. So just start. It was mentioned before, but
yes.
Just start and set up a lot of projects, work together, just begin. We don't know yet either. But because we have all those projects, we learn a lot step by step. There are many, many failures, but that's not the problem. So just start working.
Excellent, thank you very much. And now our last speaker in this slot is Kirsten. And Siri, please,
Yes,
go ahead.
thank you also on my behalf, and I hope that Helsinki will get its own donut soon. But for you, Kristen, you are the CEO of Climate Kick, and circular economy is also about sharing ideas. So could you tell us how do you lead change within different networks?
Yeah, do I press this? Okay. So first of all, let me explain just very briefly. I put this back so you have a sense of where I'm speaking from. In fact, Amsterdam, City of Amsterdam is a partner, City of Helsinki is a partner. So we are an organization that orchestrates innovation, climate innovation. And we do so by leveraging European money, the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and 40 other funders, all interested, public and private, in the role that innovation may play in the way in which we transform our cities. And if I come then straight to the question of how do we lead change in and across different networks, first and most important is through partnership. We, as an organization, are 400 partners. We work across 28 countries. We're present in 23. We work in sub-Saharan Africa, in China. We've connected through to South America and to Australia. But that is nothing. It's a drop in the ocean compared to the kind of network effect that we need in putting together the materials, the flows, the material flows, the financial systems, the legal frameworks, and the mechanisms to enable something like circular economy and circularity to take place. And I was thinking this morning, listening to a presentation of a colleague in the media room, the principle of inconsistency in design between sovereignty, the design of sovereignty into boundaries and siloed areas, whether it's the sovereignty of a city, a region, a nation, or of intergovernmental relationships, compared to the boundlessness of materials, of the planet itself, not in terms of planetary boundaries, but in terms of the flows that we need to create circularity. So the power of networks is about network effects. How do we design for the relationships between cities within the same region or within different regions? And that leads me to the second major point, which is the principle of systems innovation. How do we create the kinds of changes we need? By orchestrating innovation in such a way that it intervenes deliberately, systematically, as a mechanism to learn across boundaries and in relationship to multiple intervention points and leverage points. And that also then makes it possible to connect the cities that are learning by doing to one another so that they can act as an extended multiplying effect for the individual efforts that each city and its relationships with its citizens and its businesses are experimenting with. So that they can look at the relationships between innovation in energy, in mobility, in waste, in water, in food food circularity, in the design of logistics, in social innovation, economic systems. They can look at innovation across those boundaries and apply something like the design principle of circularity to that. And that then requires us to think about how to orchestrate relationships of learning that genuinely lean in not only to the circularity of ideas and the notion of extended test beds for learning, which is something that the City of Helsinki has constantly challenged us as an organization to think about, but to think about the way in which we design for circular economy in such a way as to use the dynamics of change. So, for example, start and work back from the vision of a difference that we want to see and think about how we would compose a diverse set of multiple initiatives, rapidly testing because we don't know the answers. And this is about designing for radical uncertainty and very quickly looking to generate possibilities and options and choices. And to think about the fact that if we do understand cities as systems and as ecosystems, and we understand that circular economy is an inherently systemic approach, then we should be able to design for system dynamics, for nudges, and for effects that we are not seeking to control, but we are seeking to shape and manage and harness. And that leads me to the final reflection on how do we do this, because I was picking up on the broader Netherlands government comment this morning. Let's stop talking about if, this is about talking about how. Mm-hmm. Taking a portfolio logic, using the idea of thinking of every city in Europe the combined power of every city in Europe acting together with a loose, but a geometric and a loose relationship to one another's efforts, like a massive portfolio where every single city's experiments, every single city's engagement with its citizens could be considered together in something that allows accelerated learning from one another. And that gives us something like the anti-fragile approaches that we need. We would call that a deep demonstration. This is an example of an artificial intelligence tool that we have available on our site for anybody working with us so that you can see who is working on what. But it starts to talk back to you and suggest who might you contact, who could you work with. And its underlying impulse is for creative collisions in the way in which we test and learn and put our rapid experimentation and prototypes together.
Excellent. Thank you, Kirsten. And as you may have heard, that Finland has now a new government, and I think our mayor here is somewhere in a hurry to go and take part in the future of Finland as well. But maybe some final questions or comments before the mayor leads to go, and we are moving to the next slot. Kirsten?
Yeah, I have a question. Actually, may I ask a question of Helsinki? I would very much,
Go ahead.
since we're here, and this is the pleasure to be here and the pleasure to learn. I had a question around the relationship between the notion of SDGs, what I have read a lot about in terms of Helsinki's commitment to being a functional city. What is your vision for what it's functional in service of? Because I'm very conscious in the work that we do, there is a lot of narrative about what we need to move away from. There is less about the vision of what we're moving to. We use circular economy to describe that, but it's like that's a functional mechanism. It isn't necessarily a vision for what the city stands for, what it offers.
You don't have any easier ones?
Sorry. Well, it's the ultimate game. What the cities offer us in terms of hope and possibility is a vision for the future.
Actually, I don't think that we in Finland or in Helsinki are that good in visions. We are better in just doing things. We are very pragmatic people. We are ambitious people. We just want to go forward. We are good in having a holistic view and comprehensive approach, understanding that everything counts. Each and every time, especially when I travel to US, they always ask me, what's your priority? Give some example. And I say that is not the Finnish way of thinking. Our way of thinking is that we need to save the planet. And in order to do that, we need to empower everyone to be on board. We need to understand each and every sector. We need to understand how to change the world, what works, what do not. We need to understand in today's world how we actually fight against populism and measures like this in order to be able to do right things. We need to understand that doing good also needs to be good business and so on. So maybe that's more like our way of thinking instead of having a ultimate vision. Then maybe the vision or program or goal which is maybe leading our policy most is our aim to become carbon neutral by 2035, which is also a very important thing. And the circular economy, of course, plays a big role within that, but it is maybe even a wider concept. And there, once again, I mean, our way of doing that is not like highlighting that we are doing this one and that one, but we have an action plan with 147 action points, and we know and understand that we need to succeed in all of those. In order to save the planet. And that's why, I mean, it's somehow misleading to point out one or two or three or four examples, even if that's, on the other hand, the right way to empower the business sector as well as the people to understand that we are taking steps forward.
Okay, excellent. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it goes, I think, to the question of, you mentioned the city being a client, and I think you're right. Cities are the most powerful clients on the planet. They're the biggest concentrations of risk and the business concentrations of opportunity, but they are also the market makers.
I like even more the sentence which we have actually in our city strategy. it is written there that we see the city as a place and a community instead of a bureaucracy. And if you really deeply understand what's all about in this way of thinking, then I think that will help solve most of the problem.
Okay. Thank you, Janne. Thank you, Anna-Riikka. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Kirsten. Give a warm hand to our leaders. Let's move on. Thank you. Okay, Siri, please introduce the next.
Thank you so much. It is now time to start our second session. And the second session is about how we are going to move from resource overuse to circularity. And I want to welcome here to our next speakers on the stage. So first, Pekka Lundmark, CEO of Fortum. Welcome. And also Lindsay Clinton, Senior Vice President of Economic Development Corporation, New York City. Thank you so much. Welcome, welcome. What do you thought about the previous session?
Oh, well, there's so many amazing cities, and there's a lot to learn from what's happening in Europe. So I sit here humbly in front of you, coming from the US.
Thank you so much for coming. It was a long flight. Pekka, it is estimated that the global circular economy markets are worth billions of dollars. So, with that huge economic potential, circular economy encourages companies to renew themselves in circular economy. But how a big company, such as Fortum, how can a big company do that change?
Well, we actually redefined our strategy a couple of years ago. We decided that we not only want to be an energy company, we also want to be a circular economy and recycling company. And I'll show you soon a couple of concrete examples of what we are doing. But of course, businesses need to choose their focus, and you have to be very sharp in deciding what you do, because this whole, the Amsterdam donut that you showed there, it's massive and it touches everything in our world. So you have to focus, but then for companies, it's very important to understand that if you want to be successful in circular economy, you have to network, and you have to be part of completely new types of networks, something that you may not be that used to from your history. This is, for example, one reason why we are a founding member of the Metropolitan Smart and Clean Foundation that Tina is heading, because that's a way for us to tap into those networks of other players that are needed to make circular economy a reality. If you just look at it from your traditional value chains point of view, it will never work, or at least it will go far too slowly. Yeah. So what I thought I would do, I'll give you very quickly 3 examples of concrete things that we have been investing and are investing in at the moment. And the first one is a plastic refinery. If I can get the first video, please. This is our latest investment. It's just 50 kilometers north from here. It's a place where we are currently receiving most of the recycled plastics in Finland. In addition to plastics that has already been recycled or separated, we also receive about 100,000 tons of unsorted household waste, and we have an automated line where we then separate plastics, group it into 5 different categories automatically, depending on what type of plastics is it. We wash it, and then we, as you can see, as you saw here in the process, we then melt it and press it into small granulates that we sell back to the industry as recycled plastics. And our capacity is currently 30,000 tons. We just tripled it, and the demand seems to be pretty much unlimited. Europe obviously is currently recycling only a small part of the 25 million tons of plastics that it is producing in waste. And here we have one of the most modern and largest facilities available. It's 30,000 tons, and we are talking about 25 million tons of plastics to be recycled. And then the other side of this coin is that half of this plastics that we manage to recycle in Europe actually is exported. It used to be exported to China. Now China has banned imports, which is obviously a very good thing, but this means that we need to substantially increase our capacity in Europe for plastic refining and recycling facilities like the one. This is obviously very important for the plastics not ending in oceans, but it also has a direct climate impact, because every ton of plastics that is recycled, instead of using virgin fossil materials, raw materials for plastics, each ton recycled plastics actually reduces 1.5 tons of CO2 emissions. So this is really a win-win for everybody. It's both for material recycling and saving our oceans, but it's also very good for climate. Then my second example, if I can get the second video, please. This is now about new waste. I mean, plastics waste has been their big problem for a long time, but this is a new area. We all know that electric vehicles will be booming in terms of volumes, and that's a very good thing, because that way we'll be able to reduce a lot of the CO2 emissions from transportation. But there is a fundamental issue with electric vehicles, and that's obviously the batteries and the sustainability of the raw materials. And I'm then talking about cobalt, manganese, nickel, and lithium. Cobalt mining in places like Congo has some serious issues associated with it. Of course, all these are being worked on all the time, but what we really need to make sure is that now when EV volumes will soon start reaching really serious levels, we need to make sure that as much of that battery as possible can be recycled. And we have just launched now a new innovation, a new service that actually is able to recycle 80% of the materials. And so we are separating all the plastics and copper and the mechanical components, but then we also now have a technology that very efficiently is able to separate these very important rare earth metals and then recycle them back to the battery manufacturers to being used again. So this is going to be a fundamental part in electric mobility. Unless this is solved in a serious way, EV will not be strong enough in its ability to solve the recycling issue. And then the third example, which is then getting closer to what an energy company like Fortum traditionally has been. If we move to this picture here, this is one of our latest investments. This is from the neighboring city of Helsinki, Espoo, which is the second largest city in Finland, where we have a very deep partnership with the city. This is a large-scale heat pump that recycles energy. It takes energy from the wastewater that is produced in the city, and it recycles it back into district heating, recycles it back into the apartments. And our goal with this type of investments is to make the entire heating of the city of Espoo over 50% carbon neutral by 2022, and in the next 10 years completely carbon neutral. That's our joint commitment with the city of Espoo. These all require big industrial investments, and the reason I want to take you through all this is that this is how, companies need to think through this type of investments, and obviously for businesses these also need to make economic sense, which obviously is the case with all three investments that I mentioned, because otherwise we would not have done them. Another example of energy recycling, which is really exciting and a great opportunity for us here in the Nordic region, is data centers. Data centers obviously is a booming industry in the world. There's a lot of data centers being built around the world at the moment. But it's waste of resources if that heat that they produce are cooled into the atmosphere. If you have a 100 megawatt data center, it also produces 100 megawatts of heat. It's totally crazy if we at the same time here burn coal to district heating, and then we don't use the excess heat that we produce in data centers. Now, a very welcome thing this is a global opportunity in all places where there are district heating networks, but now for Finland, in the new government program, there is now a goal that the electricity tax for data centers would be lowered to the EU minimum level, which would be a really, really good thing for climate and would be a key enabler for us being able to eliminate the remaining emissions that there are in district heating in Helsinki. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pekka. I was also wondering that in order to keep the global warming in 1.5 degrees, we need companies to change their operational and business models really fast. So can we trust in the goodwill of companies to do this change? Or do we need incentives or mandatory legislation in order to speed up the process?
It's not going to go by itself. What we really need is smart regulation.
Yes.
It doesn't go without regulation, or at least it goes too slowly. But the regulation needs to be smart, and what we do not need is politically micromanagement all the time, changes, very kind of local rules and regulations, or even incentives, subsidies. Much better than politically micromanaged subsidies or prohibitions would be smart, regionally fairly large. I'm mentioning EU as an example here. Regulation which simply makes the polluters pay in a market-based and predictable system, because these are long-term investments, and if we make decisions like this, we need to be able to understand the economics in a few tens of years ahead. And if I take just one example of great system, it is the EU emissions trading system, where you have the energy sector and the industrial sector, and the regulation says that these are the EU emissions that are auctioned, emission rights that are auctioned out every year, and then there is a system through which that quota is being reduced every year. And then you use the market to allocate the resources and the investments to the places first where it's most efficient and most economically feasible to reduce emissions. Something similar, and I have no answer what it would keep, but something similar we would need for the circular economy as well.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Pekka. Now we move on to New York City. And once again, welcome to Helsinki, Lindsay. You are leading in the New York City Economic Development Corporation, which is a non-profit, isn't it? To promote economic growth in the New York City. And
Right.
you do all kinds of things from business model development and technological innovation support and collaboration. But how can a big city like New York City do this all change in such a short time? So please, can you share us a little bit about that?
And thank you so much, Tina, for having me here. It's my first time in Helsinki, and it's been a good 2.5 hours so far. So as Tina said, I work for the New York City Economic Development Corporation. There's a lot happening. I'll just start by saying a lot happening in New York related to circular economy, and in particular, I will call out my colleagues at the Department of Sanitation, the largest sanitation department in the world, and the work that they are doing on the recycling side of things. Whether it relates to textiles or electronics or composting, we have the largest organics recycling program in the world. But what I'm here to talk about is the industry side of things. We are the Economic Development Corporation. Our mission is to, there we go, build strong neighborhoods and grow good jobs, and to really think about the diversification of New York City's economy and positioning us well for the future by creating the jobs of the future. And we do that in 3 central ways. One is we manage this city's 66 million square feet of real estate assets. We also oversee capital construction, so we have a $10 billion capital budget. That means that we handle redevelopment in Coney Island. You see this picture here of the Ferris wheel in Coney Island. We run the city's ferry system, which now has almost 30 different stops to enable New Yorkers to get from here to there in an affordable way. And then the third piece of achieving our mission is that we expand industry ecosystems in strategic ways. And we play in a lot of different areas. We try to maintain legacy industries like food and fashion. We work to spur emerging technologies like blockchain, AR, VR, artificial intelligence. And then we also make strategic industry plays. So right now, we're trying to make New York City more competitive in the life sciences industry, and that's a $500 million effort. And then late last year, we announced a $30 million cybersecurity initiative. And those are just two examples. I specifically oversee the Smart and Sustainable Cities portfolio, and I'm pretty new to EDC. So when I started less than a year ago, I started to wonder, what are we doing on circular economy from an industry perspective? And to be honest, there wasn't that much overtly going on. And I'll tell you a quick personal story, which is I came to EDC, really wanted to explore circular economy and wanted to do so because I've spent about 10 years looking at business model innovation and researching business model innovation. And so maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I researched and worked with a company that was working to transition. It was a multinational company in the rolled aluminum business, working to transition their business model from a typical one to a circular economy one. And they had a goal of sourcing 80% of their aluminum as recycled aluminum. This required a massive, massive shift across the entire organization and a $500 million investment. And it meant that they were shifting from 3 virgin aluminum suppliers to 50,000 recycled aluminum suppliers across the world. But the shift would mean that there would be impact on thousands of lives, because those are the people that are going out and collecting that aluminum and then getting a fair price from their aluminum. And it also meant shifts down at the factory floor level. You had to incentivize employees in a different way. So by studying this circular economy business model, I realized that it was a really game-changing scenario if you could get more large companies and small companies to innovate in that way with circular economy at the center of their business model. So that's what I came to EDC to try to make sure that we are encouraging that kind of shift and those kind of business models in New York City. And so EDC is, we have incubators across the city. We have those real estate assets that I mentioned, including many industrial assets, and then a lot of great relationships with other city agencies. We're investing in technology, and so that enables us to start to build a circular strategy. I say that with humility because, like I said, I'm near Amsterdam and Helsinki who are doing a lot on circular economy in very thoughtful ways. Our strategy is a threefold approach. 1, encouraging that business model innovation that I talked about. 2, supporting technology innovation. And then 3rd, catalyzing public-private partnerships, which we can do quite well because we are structured as a nonprofit corporation. So the first piece of encouraging business model innovation is really centered on our incubators and our assets. And one of our key assets is the Brooklyn Army Terminal. This is in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, and it consists of 2 buildings that would equate to, if you laid the Empire State Building, 2 Empire State Buildings down on their sides next to each other, that's the amount of square footage that you're dealing with on that asset. And what's amazing is that there are over 100 different traditional advanced food manufacturing companies in those buildings today, and there's a growing percentage of them that are circular economy companies. And our goal is to make the Brooklyn Army Terminal become a circular economy campus and be home to more companies like AlgaeKnit, a company that is taking kelp, which is like a seaweed product, and turning it into footwear and apparel items, really beautiful ones, I would say. Liquid Technology, which is working with companies to help them recycle their electronics equipment. Uncommon Goods is another one that's a platform for selling locally produced and artisanally produced goods, many of which are made out of recycled material. And then Cartridge Evolution, which is a company that's recycling printer cartridges, taking them back and refilling them. And those are just a couple of examples. But we want that building and some of our other incubators to be home to more circular economy business models, these models that are really driving the innovation of the future. We're also investing in technology. So I said both blockchain and artificial intelligence, cybersecurity as well. But really, blockchain and artificial intelligence have so much promise to enable the circular economy. Blockchain can enable you to better understand your supply chain and to track the transactions that are going on in your supply chain. And so New York City is investing in blockchain. We've launched a blockchain center in the Flatiron in Manhattan, which is a hub for New Yorkers and people who are running blockchain businesses to come together and learn from one another. And we're hoping to integrate more circular economy programming into the blockchain center in the months ahead. And then next is artificial intelligence, which is also a key enabler of the circular economy, as has been written in a McKinsey report that came out earlier this year in partnership with Google and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. But artificial intelligence can enable us to better understand market flows, supply and demand of materials within the city, and then to actually start to create markets because of the analysis that you're enabled to do. And so just 2 or 3 weeks ago, we launched a call for proposals around artificial intelligence and ethics, but one specific part of that proposal is to create a center that will be an incubator for AI for good. And I can definitely see opportunities for new circular economy businesses that are using artificial intelligence to be incubated there. And that's likely to be up to a $7 million investment that the city is making. One other example of the way that we're kind of playing in this space and experimenting in this space is a partnership called Connect Fashion, which is run by a company called Eon. And it's really asking this question, what if every product or every garment had a birth certificate that could tell you what it's made from, where those materials were grown, who's the person that made it, how many times was that garment worn or washed, how many owners did it have, because then you can start to have the information that you need to actually create a circular economy. So we're proud to be a knowledge partner alongside Microsoft, H&M, Target, SAP, and many others. This is a year-long journey to better understand what happens when you can truly digitize a product, and we may at some point end up doing a pilot in New York City around this. The third piece of our strategy is around catalyzing collaborations and public-private partnerships, and we do that quite well because we're this quasi-governmental agency who's able to work with our partners.
Yeah, over town a bit.
Okay.
Be careful.
Okay, we'll go fast.
Yes.
So one example of one of these partnerships that we're really proud of is something called Where Next? Make Fashion Circular, which is a partnership with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and our Department of Sanitation to educate the New York City consumer that clothes are not waste. So we put up these ads on bus stations across the city, bus shelters across the city, as well as our Link NYC kiosks to encourage that behavior change amongst New York City consumers. And the Department of Sanitation put up a map that shows over 1,000 different bins where you can put your clothing so that people can start to realize that they should not be throwing away those 46 pounds of clothes every year. Average New Yorker throws away 46 pounds of clothes every single year. I'll skip ahead and just say circular economy is a key part of our forward-going strategy. It is written into our recently released One NYC plan, creating a future towards 2050. And I'm just so excited that we've been able to call that out. And then lastly, I would just say, I invite you to do business in New York City. We are number 2 in terms of innovation ecosystems in the world, right behind Silicon Valley. We have a consumer base or a citizenry of 8.5 million, which makes New York City a great place to explore new ideas and explore new business models. We're making technology investments that are going to enable circular economy. And as our former mayor Ed Koch said quite a while ago, New York City is where the world comes to audition, and I invite you to come and experience the future. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm so sorry that I had to rush you because we are about 4 minutes delayed in our schedule, but I have to ask you because Pekka was mentioning smart regulation.
Yeah.
And I know that the stuff you are doing is from the economic side and you're boosting a lot of new markets and new businesses.
Yeah.
But can you give me very quickly what would be something smart regulating, one thing that New York City has done to be able to speed up these businesses that you're talking about?
I would just say, in the US, we have an absence of federal support for the Paris Agreement. And so having New York City really stick its neck out on a lot of things, from zero waste by 2030 to becoming carbon neutral by 2050 is key. And then I would say calling out this transition to a circular economy in our report and not talking just about the recycling side, but talking about design, talking about extended producer responsibility measures, really signals to the marketplace what's coming down the pipe so that companies can prepare.
Okay, fantastic. I just wanted to hear from you because I have a feeling sometimes here in the Nordics and in Europe we are a little bit afraid of regulation. We are like, oh, markets can do it, but they can't do it alone. You need both, right?
You need both. You need both.
Okay, thank you very much, Pekka. Thank you very much, Lindsay. Thanks. Okay, so we are heading to the final slot of our session here. It's the new economic opportunities from circularity. And the final speakers, Wayne Hubbard from London, please come to the stage. Sauli Böhm from Rescue Club, you're the CEO, right? And then we have Damiano Avellino, and you're the co-founder. The CEO is wrong, isn't it?
Yes.
From Fairbnb. Okay, so London Waste and Recycling Board has produced a circular economy roadmap with some 100 actions in it. And you've been doing a lot of stuff like New York City in promoting new markets and new businesses. I have to ask again, you're a European city, you're a very big city. How can you pull this off? So Wayne, can you please show us what you've been working on?
I'm going to go forward.
Just with the green.
Yeah, okay. So
there you go.
Just to say, I know you said earlier that Amsterdam was the leading city on circular economy. With respect,
you can correct me.
With respect, I'd like to make the case that London is. Only joking. Not really. Right. Okay. Just so you know, this is what we think about the circular economy. It's what we think we mean by the circular economy. Okay. Just in case anyone's in any doubt at the World Circular Economy Forum what it is. Obviously it's about, recycling stuff, but it's also about business models that encourage sharing, business models that offer products as services, so leasing, and business models that make stuff last, so making stuff repairable, modular, all that kind of thing. And then there's a whole load of stuff that's not mentioned here that enables all this to happen. So within that context, we set out a route map, which other cities have done, obviously, and identified some key areas and some key actions, 100 actions that we could take that could start the process of accelerating the circular economy in London. And we do that with two main programs, Resource London and Circular London. Resource London is a program that helps London boroughs, the municipalities, recycle more. And Circular London has two aspects to it. One is a demonstration program. So we have our own textiles and fashion side of things. So we're working with big retailers to help them develop some circular business models. And we also have a Love Not Landfill campaign to try and encourage Londoners, especially the young Londoners, not to throw their clothes in the bin. And then we have a business support program. And the business support program has deliberately been designed to be holistic, to support businesses on the path from startup to maturity. So we have an accelerator, which currently has 6 startups going through the program. Some very interesting startups in the construction industry. We have, so it's kind of an accelerator and incubator. Then we've just launched a venture capital program. So we have 14 million pounds, about 15 million euros. We don't get so much money for our pound anymore in terms of the euro. Thank you, Brexit. This isn't being web live streamed, is it? Oh yeah, it is. I better not go down that road. So we have a venture capital fund. We've identified, ring-fenced 14 million pounds of money for startups in the circular economy. I think it's probably the world's first public-sponsored venture capital fund that's explicitly trying to support circular startups. And then they've already invested, by the way, in one of our accelerator companies, which is a really good sign that we're on the right track. And then we have a growth capital piece, which is an investment in circularity capital, which is a Northern European fund. And that's all supported by a business support program. And the business support program supports any SME who wants to transition to a circular economy business model or already has a circular economy business model, and they do it by offering business advice. They don't offer necessarily sustainability advice, they offer business advice, but only to circular economy businesses. So this is how we help businesses in London. We've dealt with loads of businesses. I mean, some of the ones we've dealt with who you may have heard of, Uhu, who produce seaweed balls of liquid. So you can pop them in your mouth and they kind of explode in your mouth in an interesting way, which of course precludes the need for single-use plastic bottles. And they were used at the London Marathon with Lucozade, which is a sports drink, and 36,000 of these seaweed balls were made. And so there were lots of happy runners, I'm sure. Library of Things, which is where you can borrow stuff. You've heard of the circular economy drill. So you don't use your drill, you buy one and then you don't use it for 5 years. Well, Library of Things, you can hire drills, tents, all that kind of stuff. And I think there should be one of these in every housing development, and lots of others. Olio, who are a peer-to-peer food sharing app. So we can take stuff from the corporate, from the big scale, from the global, and it can be really local and community-based. And the circular economy, to me, that's what I love, that we go from, the Death Star to the rebellion. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Wayne. It looks really holistic and comprehensive and proactive, like we have learned.
And leading,
yes,
Amsterdam.
Yes, yes. And the game is on, obviously. Yeah. I don't mind. But you've been working on this for 5 years now, roughly, and you have these really amazing venture efforts and everything. But how do you scale up? How do you speed up the process? What are the next years going to be? What are you working on from this on?
I think that, so we deliberately try and work with corporates. And to be honest, we don't speak the language of corporates. So we just done a new hire, actually, to lead up our circular economy program, who hopefully will help us with that. But, the space, the nexus where corporates and startups meet, gives us the opportunity to really scale up innovative ideas. LWAB are at the point, the London Waste and Recycling Board are at the point where we're thinking what our next 5-year programme should be. And coming here actually is a really great opportunity for me to talk to my fellow circular economists in cities and try and work out what collaboratively we can do. And it strikes me that there isn't a place really where cities can meet. There are lots of organisations, there's Eurocities, there's C40, there's the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, but as cities we don't often find a place and a space to meet together as ourselves in the circular economy space. That's something maybe we can work on. I'm not sure what the next big thing is actually, and I'm really keen to talk to my colleagues and try and work out how to collaboratively we can kind of make a plan as to where we should go next to really accelerate this.
Excellent. And also we are very happy to discuss more, and Pekka, like he said, from a big corporation's point of view, with the startups, with the scale-ups, we form these ecosystems, and then they need to be orchestrated somehow. So from the early beginning, you can't only do it with the city or with the big corporations, you need everybody on board. Exactly. So that's kind of I guess, the way forward.
Indeed, yeah.
But thank you so much, Wayne.
Thank you.
So next move to Sauli. So are you Siri? Or is it my questions? I'm sorry. Just a second. So Sauli, you are leading this quite hot startup in Finland called Rescue Club. So you are rescuing, or we are able to rescue some leftover food through your app and to your platform. Are you going to change the world?
All right. Very simple question. Lovely to answer that. I guess in order to answer that, let's build some context first. Start from the obvious. So we've taken our planet for granted. We've overconsumed it. Therefore, we have a deadline, this global deadline in regard to climate change, climate crisis, emergency, however you want to call it, something that we cannot miss. And in order to meet that deadline, we need to find sort of unconventional ways to collaborate on local levels while actually maintaining a very, very clear focus on what we're doing at a time. And our focus in Rescue Club is on food, more specifically food waste. As already pointed out earlier today, it's a massive problem. It's a complex problem. It's a very stupid problem. 30% gets wasted globally across the supply chain. It's a very complex system. Lots of stakeholders, huge employer, and yet we're working in silos, which creates these inefficiencies in the system. And thirdly, the stupid problem. So we're at the moment roughly 7.7 billion in terms of global population. By 2050, we're 10, and there's a corresponding increase in food demand. And yet we're throwing 30% to the bin at the moment. So our strategy or our vision or aspiration for the future is to resolve this complex, massive, and stupid problem and create zero food waste. And if you put our strategy in one sentence, it means that what we're aiming to do is build a comprehensive transformation that actually cuts food waste down to zero in various parts of the supply chain. But you need to start from something and keep that focus. So we started this exercise 3.5 years ago from the very end of the supply chain. So our current product is an online marketplace for surplus food. So restaurants, cafes, and grocery stores, when they have that surplus food, instead of throwing that food into a bin, they can actually sell it through our platform to nearby users with a discount, and therefore contributing to this deadline. It's a very convenient way to do it. So as a restaurant, you publish the offers. Users, based on their preferences, get notified, purchase the portions through the application, and then pick it up from the venue. So very convenient way to eat well and act sustainably. Value propositions work on both sides of the marketplace. For partners, you get extra revenue from something that would be otherwise in the bin. You get new customers, and most importantly, you get to contribute to this global deadline that we're having. And the same thing on the other side of the marketplace, as in for the users, you save time, money, and planet, one portion at a time. So how we see it, it's a win-win-win solution for this part of the supply chain. And currently we're 3.5 years old company. We've saved, or you've saved, roughly 1.6 million portions. And what we're now doing is trying to expand on two ways. So both geographically, which means that you need to answer two questions. Is your product scalable? And is your process scalable? And for the current product, I can say yes to both of those questions. But then there's the second expansion track, which is a vertical expansion. So how we see it is that in order to resolve this problem, we need to start actually moving upstream in the supply chain. And that's where smart cities come in that can actually facilitate that collaboration across the supply chain.
Excellent.
That's our way to save the planet.
Thank you. Okay, I can buy that, and I think we are all really impressed already what you have accomplished so far. And you said that now next you need to move to the upper part of the value chain. But what kind of role cities can play in here? You have Wayne here from London. What could the City of London do to help you to grow your business and move it upwards?
I'd say to facilitate the collaboration and actually meeting the right players in the supply chain that actually share the same vision and values as we do. And how I see it is that more and more players start to appear in this specific domain, especially on the very last mile where we are currently working on. And what I want to see, for example, in London is to find those players that are working a bit on the upstream of the supply chain, because that's where I can see that the magic happens and we can start reducing food waste proactively instead of just covering the last mile.
What would you say, Wayne? Just a quick comment.
Well, I mean, this is a perfect example.
You were tweeting.
It's a perfect example of how technology can enable sharing, and this has got to be written all over it. If you were in London, you could come and see us. We'd maybe give you a spot on the accelerator, a bit of venture capital. So if you fancy making the move, now's the time.
All right, cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, that's not a promise, by the way. It's not. No one's tweeting. No one's tweeting this, I hope.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Thank you so much, Sauli. And now we have heard so many great examples of the circular economy, and it seems almost as a perfect solution. So maybe we should slow down a little. So, Damiano Avellino, you are the CEO of Airbnb. I love that name. And I would
co-founder, not the CEO.
Co-founder and the CEO. I would like to ask you, how can we ensure inclusive and fair circular economy? And also, maybe you could tell us what kind of risks and challenges are related to circular economy, and what kind of social problems may circular economy cause?
Okay, so basically, Airbnb is a platform that allow people to rent their apartment and rooms in a sustainable way. And we try to solve some of the distortion of the present sharing economy. We all know how much these apps and these platforms help us to connect in new amazing ways, but there are many drawbacks related to worker rights, data, privacy, extraction of value. Every time that we use an app, we are producing some value. And in particular, this disruption that came in the last 10 years have been affecting a lot some of our cities, and I'm thinking about especially European cities. But the thing is that, everyone loves to travel, and travel shouldn't be something like elitarian, but quickly a great example of using underutilized assets like a spare room or the second house quickly became a way for big companies to invest in real estate and rent on short-term rental, so put tens of apartments out of the market for residents and for the tourists. So this creates many problems, and that's why we started Airbnb, basically. We started in 4 different cities independently, and then we decided to merge. The objectives were to the objective of the initiative is to reduce the negative externalities of this new type of tourism, to create social impacts, so not only reduce negative but produce something good, create local jobs, and take back the idea of home sharing or sharing an underutilized asset. the question is how can we make a platform that is better for host, guest, and local community, something that people really want to use it, not something utopian that just stays in our mind. So what we did, it was in the last 2 years, we collected a lot of information, and we connected with many local organizations, and we focused the design of the platform on two main things. One, to create positive impact and try to create new social bonds and the social impact. And on the other end, to reduce these negative externalities. How we do this? Airbnb reduce negative externalities by having a simple rule for touristic cities. So the rule is one host, one house. So we don't allow hosts that have tens of properties to join the platform. This is really simple, but the multi-host are those that inflate more the market. So this is a simple rule that we apply in very touristic cities. And then we share the data with the municipality, and we try to make a path with them to understand how we can actually manage this new phenomena. And then I don't know why it happened. Anyway, there is a problem with the slides. But what we do is we redistribute the commission in order to generate positive impact. So there is no extraction of the value that is produced. We have a simple business model. We charge the same commission as the other platform, around 15%. Half of it is used to run the cooperative and the platform, and the other half is used to invest in community projects where you travel. So basically, you book an accommodation, you travel, and you fund a community project. In this way, we have that the hosts earn the same, the guests pay the same, but there is a benefit for the whole community. The idea is to have a platform that is a common. These new platforms are the infrastructure of the economy, and this infrastructure should be collectivized. How do we do this? Is that we compete with these giants by creating a process of community-driven growth strategy. We create a network of community. We target, in the coming 15 months, we will target 100 destinations, and we will find 3 projects for each city. And these projects and organization will help us to build our initial user base. So the first 3 projects in a city will help us to find 30, 40 hosts, and in this way we can reduce our cost of expanding everywhere, and we can be more local than Airbnb itself. Yeah, the slide is really difficult to understand, but
just remind me.
Okay, well, anyway, 2025, if we reach 5% of the market, we will be able to give back 200 million to community projects. What it becomes for Airbnb is not a short-term rental platform, but is a way to create a network of solidarity economy, of proximity economy. Platforms can help us to deliver the right product, the sustainable products. So that's why it's interesting, this idea. Last thing, Europe lost the platform race. We just have the 3% of the platforms, and it's so important for the future of our continent to use this new business model of platform cooperativism to try to compete and gain some of the race that we lost. We can maybe catch a little bit up. So what we are doing is creating this ecosystem in Bologna, and everyone that would like to help or have an organization that is in this field, please feel free to send me an email. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you, Damiano. I think that was a really great example of taking the social dimension into account when creating circular economy solutions. And you already told us how you can compete with giants just like Airbnb and so on by creating networks. But how can we still scale up that kind of solutions? How can cities help you in that?
I think cities can be really the key. Because regulation it's still not clear why we have so much wealth that is generated in our continent that flies often untaxed, and there are ways, probably not at a level of a single country or a single city, but I think as a system we should try to tackle some of the problems related to tourism and to the digital economy.
So we can take leadership as a continent as well?
I think so. Why not?
Why not?
Are so we need so much to create this bond among all the people that live in Europe, and this could be a good fight that we could do all together. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the clock, and it's 4 minutes to 4, and we are soon closing up this session, but I'm letting one question from the audience to come up if you are very quick. Who wants to ask something from our... There you are. Can you just stand up, and there's a microphone. And you can ask anybody from the great speakers that we have here in present.
Hi, thank you very much. I think it was a super interesting session. I'm Oriana Romano from WCED. I'm leading a program on circular economy in cities. And my question is about those cities that we call newcomers. We heard amazing examples from capital cities, London, Amsterdam, Helsinki, New York, in which the business community is very creative, there are very skilled people, lots of resources, the cities are very attractive. But there are also other cities that we call newcomers that are actually starting now. There are secondary cities, they are smaller, and maybe they don't have the same resources. So my question is, what are from your experience, the major bottlenecks to avoid that you would identify for newcomers to actually start the transition from linear to circular economy? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I think it's a really big question, but I'm inviting New York, Amsterdam, London. Who wants to give a quick view on that?
Well, I'll have a quick go, as I've got
please.
the mic. I mean, the thing that was mentioned earlier, actually, which is really good advice, is just do something.
Yeah.
And don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Cities act. This is the thing. Cities act. Governments think, don't they? So cities act. Just do something. We can move quicker, swifter, and be more dynamic and targeted in our actions. So just act. If you want a piece of advice, do that quick piece of analysis that identifies the specific properties of your city and where you should concentrate your sectors, and then work out some programs around that. And the second piece of advice is, if you can possibly not silo it, if you can possibly do that and avoid siloing it, then that would be great. But I kind of think that is a bit of a holy grail, which you guys in Amsterdam, you're doing some good stuff there. So
quickly, Lindsay, what do you say?
Is this on?
Yeah, it's on.
I would second both of those things that Wayne said. I think collaborating with other actors at other agencies within your community is really important. We are actively talking to the Mayor's Office of Food Policy, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, the Department of Sanitation, as I said, and it's amazing. You start to find leaders within each of those agencies who really do care about circular economy and want to advance it, and then you can kind of put together a little coalition of your own.
Fantastic. Okay, now it's time to thank you, wonderful audience, for these 1.5 hours, and our wonderful speakers here and here. I would like to remind you that tomorrow evening we are hosting the official after party, the pool party. So if you haven't enrolled, there are some spaces left still, so please do that through the app. And I really hope to see you all there at the latest. But as this conference is about scaling up the solutions and what we just now discussed, you need to act, and it's not only talking anymore. So please do share your experiences during the break already. Contact us, contact anybody that has been here presenting, so we don't want this to be just between us here and then everybody goes home and is trying to invent the wheel again. So let's share. Thank you very much.
Thank you.